OpenTTD can be a complex game, and if you've ever been stuck, you're not alone. So today I'm going to be taking the top questions from Reddit so that you can become a transport tycoon. If you've ever got questions about OpenTTD, you can go to the OpenTTD Discord, or to my Discord, or to the subreddit. And we're going to focus on that last one today because a number of questions keep cropping up. And I've made a list. Now, for some extra fun, you can follow along and count how many of these you knew the answer to, and let me know at the end down in the comments. If you want to remove part of a station without having to remove it all, what you need to do is just open up your station screen and then press R on the keyboard. This goes into a remove mode and you can actually just take away a little bit of the station rather than all of it. Here's one that stumped me the first time I tried to do it. How do I build a dock in a canal? So if I go to waterways, I can build out this canal and I can put a nice docky sort of area in, but to actually then put the dock in, the site is completely unsuitable. Well, it's not too bad. All you have to do is raise up a bit of land next to the edge of your canal. This allows you to then connect the dock to the land, similar like you would to the edge of the land going onto a piece of water, and then you can place in your dock. Over here we have a coal mine and a train picking it up and taking it to the middle. Then we want to use road to take it to the power station. With our road construction and going into lorries, we can put our truck stop right on the side of the station. This will make it the same station. You can see that if I pull it away, we don't get the little white boxes on the actual station platform. Do you see them popping in and popping out? So if I place it there, right next to the station label changes and you can see that we've got trains and trucks able to go. This is one station. There is another way you can do it, and that's by holding control. When you build holding control, you get this join station option, and you can choose what you want to join it to. Now, in this case, we can join it to our woods station with the trains, and if I click that, then even though these two pieces are not physically connected, they count as one spread station. And what you need to do is actually tell the train to transfer this. So, in the orders, we go to the station where we want to drop it off at, in this case, the wood station, and from the unload options, we click the drop down and go to transfer. There we go. So now it's going to do transfer and leave empty, and that's good timing because the train's just arrived, and as it arrives at the station, it will unload, the coal will get dropped off there, and the train will leave. And then we can get our road vehicles in just to come and pick up the coal from that station just like normal. Next up, it's people confused about how to get longer trains in your game. Here we have a train of length 10 and you can have them even longer, and they seem to think that maybe you need some sort of GRF or mod to be able to make that happen. You don't need that, it's actually just a game setting. If you go up to your settings, you can change the length of the train. There we go. Just looking for len in the filter shows us a number of different things, including the maximum bridge length, tunnel length, and the maximum length for trains. Just a note on this one, if you increase the maximum length of your trains, you might also want to increase the length of your station spread so you can build bigger stations too, and that's in here as well. Next up is how to do height maps in the scenario editor. You can make your own games, and in here you can go load height map. If we get the one from our charity game and load it in, you can see that we have a logo in the middle of our height map world, and this has come from an image file. Now, I explain how to do this, how to create your image file, how to get it into OpenTTD, and then what you need to do to be able to play it in a dedicated video. So I'm not going to go through all of that here, but it is definitely something to take a look at because you can get some interesting games set up from using height maps. Next up is a bit of a kind of query around cargo payments. Now, it can be quite complicated, but generally if you go further you get more money, and if you go quicker you get more money. There's a graph in the game to help with this. You go down to the cargo payment rates graph, you can see that as you go along this graph further and further, more and more days in transit, the cargo value decreases. Sometimes this can stop people wanting to do long lines because they think, well, it's going to be loads of days in transit to go from that side of the map to the other side of the map. I won't do that. But there's an important thing that a lot of people miss on this graph, and that's this is for a distance of 20 squares. So it's a days in transit per distance that you get the payment for. You go further and further and further with a shorter amount of time, you're going to be on the left-hand side of this graph. So go long distances, because also it's efficient, because you're not having your vehicles move around your train stations and then start to accelerate up your track only to then get to their destination in 5 squares. You're going at full speed along a long line, and that's efficient. You're traveling many squares very quickly, and that's what you want with your lines. So go relatively long with your lines, keep them fast and efficient, and you'll get lots of profit. Sometimes when you've got lots of stations, it can be difficult to know what cargo is waiting at which station and so forth, and what all the ratings are. Well, actually, it's not difficult, but what you need to do to find that out is go to the station list. Here you get a list of all of your train stations, and you can do some cool things in here to get some good information. First off, what I recommend you do is go to the sort by, and you can go sort by either available cargo or maybe total waiting cargo. And then you can swap this around. So you can see here, these are the ones which we have no cargo waiting, and if we reorder the list, these are the stations that have the most cargo waiting. So if we click here, we can see that this station has a lot of passengers and mail waiting at it. In addition, we see these little tiny bars beneath the product there. So beneath the passengers and the mail, we've got the green and red lines. This is your ratings at the station as well. So if we look at the station ratings, we've got good for passengers and medium for the mail. And we can see that those are reflected underneath the cargo types. Sometimes this can be just too much though, and you might say, well, I'm not really interested in my bus services. Well, you can toggle and change which services you look at over here. You can look at just airports, or if you have all of them enabled and hold control and click your bus, it removes the buses. Maybe you want to remove trucks as well, and you can see it just takes them out of there. You can also do the same with the cargoes. You can click to look at a particular cargo, or you can hold control and we can say, I'm not actually interested in engineering supplies. Let's remove that one off the list as well. And it allows you to focus on what you want to look at. Next up, people often want to know how to convert their lines to electric, because you start the game often with normal railway construction and then later on you can do electrified railway construction. But how do we get our old network easily and quickly changed over? Well, actually, a lot of people that are asking this question miss just this little tiny button on the end of the construction. It converts any railway to electric that you swipe over. So if I swipe over part of the network, you can see it changes it all to electric. Now, if you want your entire network done, an easy way to do this is if you go to the map icon and down to extra viewpoint, you can get a viewpoint at the top of the world and you can go to the bottom of the world. And you can swipe from the viewpoint to the real world and get the entire map in one go. Next up, it's how to grow towns and cities, and this is quite straightforward. You just need up to 5 stations where cargo is being picked up or dropped off regularly, and then the town will grow very nicely. There's other things you can do like building out the road network, and I cover all of this in detail in my video about how to grow towns and cities, and the link to that, along with all the other videos that I mentioned, are in this video's description. But you can see here that there are other requirements as well sometimes. Here in the desert, we also need to deliver food and water. So check those requirements depending on what climate you're playing. And here's actually an example of that in place. We've got a station and we've got 4 bus stops in the middle of the town, growing it out to quite a substantial size. But next up is how to actually have a good rating with the local authority. So if you click the city information and go to local authority, you can see my rating with them is outstanding. There's a number of different things you can do to make your rating go up, providing them services, for example. But also, if you're a bit stuck and your rating's too low to build, try planting trees. That very often helps the rating go up, and it might get you out of a sticky situation. One question that came up was, how do I send all of my trains to the depot? Well, there's a few different ways you can send trains to the depot. If you click on a train and look at its train information, there's a button to send it in, and that just does one of them. What if you want more? Well, let's say you want every train that goes to this station to go to the depot. Well, you can go to the station information, click the trains list, and down on the trains list you can manage that list and send them to depot. That allows you to then just get all of the trains, no matter which one they are, to the depot for that particular station. Also, if you go to your train list, you've got groups. You might not use groups, but if you select a group, you can manage that and send all of the trains in that group to a depot. And even if you don't use groups, then the entire train list is there for you. And again, the manage list and send to depot. You can send all of them to the depot at the same time. So those were the ones that were not so common, and next we're going to move on to the very common ones, and then we'll come to our top 3. But just to remind you, if you are enjoying the video, please do give it a like. Next up is folder locations, and this is usually people either wanting to get a game that they've saved and maybe move it to another device, or perhaps they've downloaded something and they want to put it in a folder so it's available in the game. Now this is a bit challenging because it varies depending on your operating system, so you may have to look it up. But for Windows users, the common default place for it to be is in your My Documents folder. If you go to your My Documents folder and then look inside there, will be an OpenTTD folder. Inside here is all your configuration files. It's also got your keybinds. It's also got folders for scenarios and game modifications like GRFs, and also your game saves. So that's where you want to go for most people. Look in your My Documents folder, and there is an OpenTTD folder with all the subfolders inside there. Next up is a question about removing and adding GRFs while a game is going on, and this usually is not advised. For example, we've got furs going on here, and if we removed it right now, the game would probably just crash. But there's some that you might be able to change and move while the game is still going. For example, here we go, we've got one game. I'm going to go to the new GRF settings, and I'm going to go to the no grid land and just remove that and apply the changes. It gives us a warning saying you're silly, and you can see now we've got the grid land back again, and in this instance our game hasn't crashed. Now the reason I was able to do that is because there is a command, which I'll put on the screen, that you have to put in the console to change it so that you have a special developer mode. There's another way of doing it, and that's with dealing with scenario files, and I made a video about that as well. I would probably do the scenario file thing because it kind of forces you to make saves of your game and transfer the files and actually think about what you're doing, and you really need to be careful. Not recommended, but if you want to give it a go, check out the video. Next up is questions about vehicles bunching together and how to spread them out. My favourite way of dealing with this depends on the vehicle type. Now, with road vehicles, what I like to do is get the road vehicle's orders, and I like to tell it that at a certain point within its orders to go to the nearest depot. From there, what you can do is you can say, I want you to unbunch. This is a relatively new feature, and what that will do, that vehicle will go into a depot and it will sit and wait there until a nice space within the circuit, and it will then come out. You might find that your depot gets a few vehicles waiting in it from time to time, and it also takes a few minutes for these vehicles to spread themselves out, but it's a very effective way of doing it with road vehicles. You can do it with trains, but because they move slowly in and out of depots, it can be less efficient. So what do we do for trains? Now, there's a couple of different ways you could do it. You could use timetables, and yes, I've got a video about that as well. But one of the things that I like to do, if I wanted like a minimum gap between my trains, just remove some signals. Here we have a length of track, and if I come in and go to the signals tool and go remove and just take out a few of those signals. Now that will mean that trains leaving this station will have to wait at least that length behind another train before they can carry on. The rest of the track can have all the signals as normal to keep flow working quite nicely, but this is a nice gap maker, and it makes sure there's a certain gap between your trains. So there's my 3 different ways of dealing with it. Next up, we have questions about the game speed. The default way of doing it in OpenTTD is just to use the calendar mode, and the game just ticks along. So many minutes per month, so many months per year. But what you can do is go into the game settings and change that. If we look at timekeeping, you can change it to wall clock, and when you do that, you can choose the minutes per year that happen. Now this doesn't affect the speed of the vehicles or the actual simulation of the game, it just says how long a day will take. So if your games want to be longer or shorter, you can adjust this to make that happen. But we talked about speed of the vehicles in the simulation. What can we do about that? Well, we can actually go to the question mark and go down to show frame rate. And in here, it tells you the current game speed factor. And most of the time, this is at 1. But what you can do is make it run quicker by using the fast forward button. And you can see my game's currently running at about 15 times speed. So what you can do is go into the game settings. And if you do search for fast, you can see that the fast forward is got an option in there. And that option currently is set to no limit. That's not the default, but you can change this to a certain percentage of how fast you want the game to run. So if we change it to 200%, then when I use the fast forward button, the game will run at 2 times speed. There we go, everything's speeded up a little bit. But, and this is an interesting one that some people often ask how you can do and whether it's even possible. And it is possible. If you go in and have a look, you can change this percent value to something smaller than 100, say 25. And when you run the game at that speed, the game runs at a quarter of the normal speed. All the notifications, all the vehicles are all running at a quarter speed, allowing you to do your gameplay with everything going much slower. So, it depends which way you want to look at it. Do you want your days and years to tick by fast, or do you want your vehicles to go faster or slower? Now you know how. And now on to our top 3, and also a reminder that if you're not subscribed, please consider doing so for more games and videos like this. At number 3, we have station designs and people wanting help trying to either fix them or plan them. And my biggest piece of advice with station designs is give it a go, try things, do things in different ways and see what happens. As a general rule, it's a matter of opinion as to what ways you might prefer to do things, although there are some designs which would mean you get better throughputs than others. So have a go, see what you can do. But if you want some guidance, especially around the signals, I do have a video that helps you with kind of getting the right ideas for building your own station designs. And at number 2, we've got requests for GRF recommendations. So you can play the vanilla game, and it looks like that most people do that and then go, hey, what mods can I use? And come onto the Reddit to ask about that. Well, here we have my OpenTTD Series 11 Let's Play, and this is a good example because I have a collection of mods on here which I very often recommend to beginners. And the why I recommend these is because a lot of them just do small things or aesthetic things, and then there's one kind of big-ish one in there as well to make it more interesting. So let's have a quick look at that. So if we go to the cog and go to the new GRF settings, we can have a look at the different ones that are in here. First up is Shark, which adds all these different new sorts of ships into the game. Then we have the generic tram set, which allows you to be able to build the tramway infrastructure. There's the total town replacement, which gives us different looking cities. I quite like the look of them. There's the vac train set, that means that after monorail and maglev, we have vacuum tube trains as well. And also in the future, once our road vehicles' wheels have got a bit tired, we have hover vehicles that we can put on our roads as well. There's Industry Stations Renewal, a brilliant eye candy one. So normally your stations look relatively normal like this, but if we hop somewhere over here, you can see that we've got different looking stations, and that's because of the Industrial Stations Renewal. Then we've got the Industrial Track set, so if you want to build track that matches those stations, you can do. And then we've got the ISR road depots, so you can see the kind of aesthetic that we have with the train station here. Well, the depots match that aesthetic. Then we have the British station set. So if we have a look here in the railway construction, we can construct stations in the British station platforms, and they've got sloped edges and buffers and kind of footpaths and all sorts of other things to decorate our stations in a completely different way if we wish to do so. And then there's the Total Bridge Renewal set, which gives us a whole set of new bridges, and we can see some of them here. We've got concrete bridges and other ones with great big girders and so forth. And finally, and by no means least, is the FIRS Industry Replacement set. So instead of just having the standard industries, we have different ones around the map. So we have things like quarries and forests and terminals and chemical plants and a vast tapestry of interwoven connected resources that can be moved between different things. So, if you've only played vanilla and you want to step in, there are my recommendations, and yeah, try those and FIRS. I think they're pretty good. Oh, in addition to that, when you're looking through the download content, when you highlight one, there's a button that will take you to either a website or forum post that tells you more about it. So use that button, and also when you download them, nearly all of them have a README file, and then they're worth having a look at because they'll tell you a little bit more about how it works or what you can expect. And at number 1, the thing that gets asked the most about in the OpenTTD Reddit is junctions. Usually either the design or creation or troubleshooting those junctions. And for me, I like organic junctions like this. As my network grows, I add new bridges and tunnels and lines, and they all flow around in each side, all as you can see, like spaghetti here. But some people like to design symmetrical and smart looking junctions from the get-go, and there's some good examples on the OpenTTD wiki about that. Now, there is an interesting note, and that is a lot of my junction doesn't work, I can't figure out why this train is waiting at this signal and won't go through my junction questions. So many of them are because a part of the junction hasn't been converted to electric track. And there'll usually be a number of comments in there, you missed a piece of electric, and then the person's like, oh no, how could I be so silly? So yes, if your trains are ever having pathing problems, why isn't this train moving? Why is this train stuck at this junction? Why is this train stuck at a station? Think, is there a piece of electric track missing, or is there a signal backwards? That's the other one as well. So there we go, folks. If you want to know more about junctions and the principles behind building them, of course, I've got a video about that too, but they are the top ones for Reddit. So there we go, that is the most common questions I found on Reddit. Let me know down in the comments how many of them you knew, along with any thoughts, ideas or questions you may have, and I will see you soon. But for now, thanks for watching, take care, and goodbye.